Good morning, everybody. Members on the dais, Shri T.K. Sengupta, Chairman Technical Committee and Director INPSC, Shri Shakil H. Kadriji, Executive Director and CEO of CCPS, who just now delivered a very exciting talk. My compliments to him. Mr. Mathur from ONGC, Mr. Bansal from FIPI, old colleagues, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to express my gratitude to Messrs. ANSYS and Federation of Indian Petroleum Industry, FIPI, for inviting me to be part of this International Process Safety Conference, 4th edition 2020, and sharing my thoughts with this august gathering on an extremely significant issue of next generation safety, excellence through culture and transformation. Process safety practices in process industry has been in vogue since 1960s. While standards have improved since then and much work has been done, particularly in inherently safer designs and management systems, catastrophic incidents still continue to happen. Over the years, industry has transformed itself from viewing process safety in isolated modules to applying process safety as a life cycle approach. This transformation led to what is currently known as process safety management. And as you heard Mr. Kadri, CCPS has been doing pioneering work in the area of process safety management. They have come up with large number of guidelines and books on the subject. Organizations across the world have adopted many of those systems and processes in implementing process safety management. Most of us are aware process safety management currently consists of 20 elements as elaborated by CCPS in one of their guidelines, and supporting it in 4 pillars. Among them, safety culture seems to be the most important element, as all the elements of process safety management are ultimately interlinked to safety culture. In the last decade, we have witnessed some catastrophic accidents which led to drastic change in tolerance of society, regulators, stakeholders towards accidents. We have had number of incidents all over the world, and unfortunately, we have also had our shares of unfortunate incidents which have brought the process safety approach into focus. Some of these incidents that I'm reminded of are BP's oil spill disaster in Gulf of Mexico, resulting from a deep water well blowout at Macondo Prospect, is considered the largest accidental marine oil spill in the history of petroleum industry. I think we all know what it did to BP. It was not only a huge financial loss, but had a big dent on the reputation of organization. An organization of the stature of BP had great difficulty in dealing with the scenario. Jaipur fire accident in year 2009, which resulted in death toll of 11 and caused extensive damage to surroundings. We are all aware in India what we had to go through. And when that happened, actually, as a follow-up action, there were a lot of investigations. Committees are formed to go into root cause analysis and what went wrong. And they came across, then number of recommendations were formed by a famous MB committee. Many of those have been implemented by organizations. They have found way into many of our safety standards. OSD has done a pioneering job in that. Pipeline blaze with multiple fatalities in East Godavari village, Andhra Pradesh. One of the very unfortunate incident. Explosion in Venezuela's largest oil refinery in 2012, with initial reports indicating cause attributed to poor maintenance. Blast and fire at one of the cooling towers in a refinery, Indian refinery, resulting in several deaths. Something very surprising. People wouldn't expect a cooling tower to be seeing a blast, but it happened, and there were reasons. When one goes into details and analysis of what happened, it can be seen the root cause of the above and multitude of accidents that have occurred in process industry had been found wanting in one major aspect, which is safety culture prevalent in an organization. While, as was talked by Mr. T.K. Sengupta and Mr. Kadri and our colleague Mr. Mathur, leadership has a very important role to play in bringing about a safety culture in the organization. But then sustaining that culture across entire organization down to the last worker is a very, very big challenge. And I think most of us recognize when the accidents happen, many times it is the contract workers which are involved at the ground. And most of the time it is realized it is that disconnect or lack of communication down to the last level of performance at the ground where people are not made aware or they are not being trained enough to address safety concerns, and that is how incidents happen, unfortunate incidents happen. Most of the times SOPs are flouted. So driving down the safety culture across the organization is actually a challenge and is the role of leadership. Now, what should be done to achieve a safety culture transformation? The goal of organizations should be to embed safety in organization DNA. I think many of the organizations are working on this very hard. But to embed a sustainable safety culture, we must overcome the mindsets that underline unsafe behaviors. Now, it's easier said than done, but is a challenge which has to be taken head on. Typical limiting mindsets which may impede an organization's safety culture include fear of being punished for reporting actual facts or lapses. Most of the time people are afraid of reporting incidents, even though they are minor in nature. And people generally believe safety is someone else's job, which is actually not the case. The operator who's at the ground, everyone has a responsibility for implementing safe behavior. Safe means less productive, not being able to achieve targets. And people many times attribute if we apply too much of safety regulations, protocols, processes, we will compromise on our production targets, etc. That's the belief actually. That is what impedes implementation of safe practices. Injuries are part of the job. This is taken as granted, Cultural change takes time. This is the general belief. People believe it can't happen overnight, therefore let it be so. These are the things which actually impede implementing a safety culture in an organization. So how can these aspects or loopholes be plugged? Managers and leaders need to set an example and walk the talk. This is critical if we want our safety culture to permeate the organization. Putting HSE issues high on the agenda should always be the goal. And I think now in India we have seen last about 5 to 10 years, there's been tremendous focus on safety culture and process safety management, and all organizations are working diligently on achieving the best in this area. Now, getting message across organization that resource allocation of safety is profitable in terms of asset protection and employee well-being, then trying to address an accident which according to a study is 10 times the cost invested in critical safety improvements. So this is important. This message has to go across the organization. People must invest in safety systems. Now, what do we expect from various stakeholders that can improve safety culture? Now, safety culture should ensure that industries stay totally updated with the dynamic technological, societal and economic standards of the society. Also, other stakeholders with statutory bodies, academic institutions and society should play an active role to achieve safety culture and transformation. This can't be done by few individuals. The whole gamut of stakeholders have to play an active role in achieving this objective. Hence, process safety professionals across industries, statutory bodies, academia and society have an obligation to drive this improvement. Now, from industry's perspective, what can be done? I think it was mentioned in previous talks. Today, the number of technologies are available, and adoption of new technology is key to improve the process safety management. Many of you must be aware, computational flow dynamics based application in oil and gas operations and safety, like 3D fire and gas detector mapping, congested area explosion modeling, etc., are the tools available these days. Geographic information systems, the GIS for the selection of plant locations, routing of pipelines, including terrain information, etc., technologies are available to use. Artificial intelligence is finding way into improving our plant operations, whether it is process plants or pipeline operations, any oil and gas installations, where we do have a lot of data available, but data somehow remains in silos, not being utilized. I think artificial intelligence is an extremely important tool which is finding way into making use of the data, including big data analytics techniques are being used, and then applying these to the process safety management. Similarly, I think it was talked that digitalization or digital transformation in organizations have to play a very important role in achieving the best process safety management. And many of the organizations are working again in this area. There are technology providers, I'm sure during the course of the conference we'll hear out many of them, where they can give technology solutions, how digital platforms, including digital twins, can be used to improve the process safety and also improve the plant operations, reliability and performance, etc. Now, in terms of behavioral aspects, safety is not achieved by just complying with letter of law. Safety is about long-term sustainable performance, including profitability. Industry should play an active role in the development of future engineers and technicians through collaboration with educational institutions. I think Mr. Qadi did mention about the engagement, active engagement with various educational institutions. This culture, this aspect has caught attention in India also. Many of our universities are now offering structured courses in process safety. I think we need to do much more in that direction. The young engineers, be it any discipline, not only chemical engineers, when they enter industry, I think they have to get a good grooming, a good idea about process safety aspects. And I think the educational institutes can play a very important role in that direction. Industry should also support internships and work experiences to enable students to learn process safety in the workplace as part of their degree trade qualifications. This is what we are talking about. Industry should maintain the competence and long-term risk management experience in order to overcome the problems caused by people moving between roles quickly. So this is important. That is where training becomes very important, Industry needs to put emphasis on research such as inherently safer technologies, abnormal situation management technologies, etc. I think these aspects play a very vital role in implementing effective process safety management. Now, statutory bodies also have an equally important role to play. They should play a very proactive and trusted role in improving process safety outcomes. When the statutory bodies are seen as more competent by society, naturally they are trusted more. We should address the issues of regulation and enforcement as well as tolerable risk definitions. I think in India, in oil and gas sector, we do have OSD doing a pioneer work in that area. PNGRB is coming up with a lot of regulations. There are other bodies. Industry needs to support the statutory bodies for clearly defined land use planning requirements, which shall go a long way in enhancing overall safety. That's where a very critical aspects is involved. While we set up facilities to begin with, they are typically at safer locations, but we have seen in India and maybe many other places over the years, those places no more remain isolated. A lot of growth happens in and around those industrial establishments. That is where government or regulators have to play a role in defining kind of safety zones, etc., across the hazardous industry. There have been recommendations to this effect by Ambilal committee and others. Something has to be done in that area. Now, from society's perspective, industry and statutory bodies need to engage with societal stakeholders in a transparent manner. Most importantly, this engagement needs to be multi-directional. Society has a part to play as the beneficiary of the products of industry. This may require education programs at various levels to build fundamental knowledge about industry and associated hazards. Public awareness and involvement in process safety is important. I think, like I said, with passage of time, a lot of people move closer to hazardous industry, etc., not recognizing the kind of hazards involved and what kind of risks they are exposed to. That is where there has to be a concerted effort in making public aware in terms of the industry hazards, etc. So safety culture, of course, like I mentioned, most of the organizations doing a lot of work in that area. In my organization, that is EIL, we also try to do our best in terms of building process safety management as part of the designs. Process safety management starts at conceptual design stage of a project and is carried out during various phases of project execution. There has to be a life cycle approach to a process safety, which actually brings a lot of benefits. It begins with adequate care being taken while finalizing the layouts and plot plans, taking into consideration the risk assessment studies. It's very critical actually to go into a hazard identification, risk assessment, etc., while first selecting a site, then planning the layout of a facility. You can do a great deal to begin with when you set up a facility to minimize the risk to the facilities outside the complex as well as within the complex. And we do practice that very sincerely. Now, this is carried forward by ensuring strict compliance to codes and standards, correctly specifying design conditions and material of construction to cover all normal and transient and startup conditions. Mr. Qadri did mention one of the incidents where when the elbow failed, there were recommendations of change of metallurgy, but these are not implemented. But when you build plants, actually when you select metallurgy, these are designed for certain life, because you can't be doing too much of gold plating in any plant. You have to strike a balance. Therefore, various components in a process plant, as part of design, you decide as to what kind of life expectancy is there from those equipment. So accordingly, you have the heavy, thick wall reactor, they are designed for 30-35 years at a stretch. But piping systems, you select metallurgy, etc., in a way that they will be over a period of time based on the inspection results, etc., with going through repairs, maintenance and replacements also. So same is the case on number of other equipment. So those aspects have to be built as part of design. And we at EL believe that our collective goal is to prevent rather than control and mitigate. That is where, like I earlier mentioned, inherently safer designs have to be, technologies have to be adopted. You have to build a lot of active and passive safety measures as part of the design so as to minimize the human interference, and that can result in achieving strict adherence to safety and design standards. I am sure the deliberation of the conference will sow the seeds of transformation and will encourage companies to adopt new practices followed across hydrocarbon value chain. I wish all the very best to organizers and hope a grand success for the conference. Thank you for your time.